All right, we are streaming to Facebook and LinkedIn, and we'll have a recording of this. So if you brought your team like we were talking about today, then you've got the questions you can ask afterwards. It's going to be an awesome experience. We're creating some space to really think about how we treat and lead other people. So if this is your first time, welcome to the porch. I'm Lindsay Baccardo, keynote speaker and virtual presenter for organizations who want to build strong, heart-centered, multi-generational teams. I personally believe and see in the marketplace that the modern day leader has an obligation to grow personally and lead others from a grounded and healthy place. So you're going to hear me bring on psychologists, neuroscience experts, storytellers, emotional intelligence researchers, really anything that helps you and I grow personally and ultimately impact the culture of our organizations. This is where I get to bring on my favorite thought leaders on these topics to teach and mentor us. And today I've got a favorite. Brian Fretwell is here. I originally met Brian on TikTok, and his videos, everybody was watching his videos and commenting on them. He's this like TikTok storyteller. And as I listened, I heard his message, I heard his heart, and I knew that I would do whatever it took to get him on the porch. He's got a TED Talk that has over 2.3 million views. So he's on to something, and he's got a book, Experts of Our Own Potential, that's fabulous. If you're a coach on this call in particular, you're definitely going to want to hook up with Brian after this and hear more about all that he's doing. His book tells us the story of his coaching career. Brian, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Thank you for taking the time when you already had presentations all day. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, that's I appreciate you reaching out. I'm excited to be here. Been looking at your stuff all day and maybe in the last week. Just have a little speaker envy. Like website is rad, by the way. I'm excited to have this kind of a break in the day to have interactive versus
yes.
We had a couple presentations today, and I love them. But this is, I get to sit down here. So
yeah,
I got the standing desk. I might move around just to shake things up. We'll see. Anyway,
I totally get it. Okay, I love to start out, Brian, asking just a really lighthearted question to get things started. What is a childhood memory that has shaped you? Like, what's a moment that when you think back, it's really defined you as a person, the work that you do? Does anything come to mind that you think that jogs your memory?
When I was 13, so my father was a truck driver. And when you're that age and living in a small town, and my dad's a former Marine, worked at a mining company and was now a truck driver. So for me, he was Superman, right? I remember coming home one day when I was 13 and seeing him on the couch and his entire body was wrapped up. He had fallen off the top of the trailer in a semi, so about 17 feet. It was raining. He slipped on potatoes. I'm from Idaho, so now he slipped off of that and broke his back. And I remember vividly Superman losing his cape to some degree, right? Like that kind of down. And he had to, they wouldn't let him back on the truck, like the doctors wouldn't. So he had to go back to school and get his associates in computer programming. He ended up going back to truck driving later, but he said something to me at the time that was, don't let anyone else control your future. What he was talking about was, he had been in these manual fields his whole life. And now with his back broken, his options were limited. And so, that conversation, I tell people, I went to college, got an education degree because they were going to need teachers. I got a commercial driver's license so I could drive trucks anytime. And then I got a master's in business so that in any market, I'm employable, right?
Wow.
To some degree, there's some good parts and bad parts to that, but I think it very much like you see remnants of that in my book and my speaking about how we create our own kind of freedom to choose to self-direct and how that freedom is so related to our understanding of security, right?
That's what I loved about your book, because we talked about a lot. Your main character, is kind of chasing his security And you had some elements of your book. I warned Brian before, I'm basically reading his book back to him, but there's some things that really stood out to me that I want to share with listeners because it's so important. Do you mind if I read you, pretend that I'm auditioning to Audible your book? Okay. The reality is that the median tenure for the average worker is between 3 to 4 years and has been since the mid-90s. The idea of working for the same company for more than 10 years is now what happens to outliers, and it's far from the norm. The reasons for this number have less to do with people being disloyal or uncommitted as much as they are about fewer opportunities to advance, less incentives and raises, and the instability of businesses themselves. The ability to find a job and retire in 40 years with a pension has been all but non-existent for close to 40 years. So this idea that we can externally create enough security in our lives to live it out and not have to worry, you're saying that's not really what the data shows.
Yeah, or how we do that is significantly different than our kind of herd understanding of that, right? And this is specific to my generation. I'm in my 40s, so we kind of grew up with that idea of like, go get your degree, go get the right job, and everything will be, bunnies and rainbows after that. And it's a lot more complicated than that. And
that's right.
I don't approach that in a good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is.
No judgment.
Yeah, and you don't have to beat ourselves up for, again, average getting a new career job every 3 years, 4 or 5 different careers over your life. It's really looking at it and saying, okay, how do I, if the, like my grandfather was a union boss, right? So he had the same job as from World War II on, right? And so that provided him a level of security that he could kind of count on. And now we kind of have to create that. Our brain still requires that same certainty, but how we create it has changed. Yeah.
That's really so important because I know that when millennials were coming through the workplace and they were kind of the first generation to kind of up and move regularly, I was coaching around generations in the workplace, trying to have CEOs understand that the work has changed. It sounds like part of what you're saying is we're in a different era now. We don't have the same job that long. So expecting that or making a judgment about it isn't really helpful. It's just not where we are.
Yeah. And it's not helpful on either end, right? If you're in a position where, to move up, I mean, there's numerous studies out there that talk about if you're in the same, even company for more than 4 years, you are significantly impacting your long-term income potential. And
isn't that wild that would be seen as a bad thing?
Right. Yeah. And so I think that even the idea of it's easy to look at that and say, well, that's disloyalty, but it just changes what loyalty looks like. Right. So
that's
if I'm going for that job, the more direct communication an individual can have with their manager or even the company about here's what I'm looking to create in the next 4 years. And then we'll reassess from there. Then the loyalty is about that 4 years. But what's happening so often is because we have this, you're supposed to be this here forever, we limit the individual from being able to say, here's my 4-year development that I might run off to somewhere else. And the more that person then has to hide that part of them, the less you get that person 100% in their career, right?
That's so true.
Yeah, and it hits on we are pack animals. We are our social brain, as Michael Lieberman would say. The less I'm able to fully be present as the individual, and in this case, I can't tell you what my plans are, the more my brain has to process not being fully accepted, meaning out of the pack. And so that's going to trigger the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and just limit cognition in the neighborhood of 20%. It's really, there's how we show up, the ability to be transparent, all play directly into performance, right?
That makes perfect sense when you think about it that way. And there's something else that you said that I had another question for you, but I lost it. I'm sure it'll come back. But this idea that we're social animals, and when you have to hide parts of yourself and people can't see it. Oh, this I was going to say. In one of the companies that I was working for, that I was doing kind of chief people officer or training for to help people grow this area, we started to notice that this sales team, the only people that would quit, the first sign that they were going to quit was that they'd stop going to lunch with everybody. So they
Yes.
would start to physically withdraw. And that was one of the first signs of like, uh-oh, the social animal isn't going to the Mexican restaurant next door to get tacos. We got a problem. And we started to see this pattern.
Yeah, and because you can, I mean, it's if you ever watched, what is it, the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So there's always like episodes of Sheldon having to lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in those, and he's so uncomfortable, like all this backstory. Well, he's just out loud doing what's happening unconsciously for all of us. I'm not going to go to that lunch because it's uncomfortable to have to hide a secret.
Yes.
Right? To not feel like, and so if I'm uncomfortable going to lunch, I'm less talking in a meeting, I'm less bringing forward a project, and I'm certainly not putting myself at risk with a new idea, right? And the problem is, you don't see it. It's not they're not saying it out loud.
That's right.
What you do is you see that in the data trends, broader, right? That lack of innovation, that lack of connection and conversation. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That is so cool. So when you think about, I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but I got to talk about it now. You've got this website, peoplestrength.com.
Yeah.
Which is incredible that you got that URL in 2021, 2020.
Really.
But it sounds like this is part of what you're helping people understand, this, that we're social animals, that there are these pieces about our emotions and the way we connect with people that are our secret strength or become maybe our kryptonite. Is that too far?
Well, to put it, I guess plainly, we're stronger together. Right?
There it is.
That's a mammals, individuals, or rather mammals, people. And there's actually things that we can do with each other that actually help us clarify our strengths, what we do well, all of this stuff. And this has been the work that we've been doing since the pandemic started, because we started an experiment a year ago right now.
Yeah.
Where we just opened up a Zoom call, and the original idea was to just help people get connected. But what we've discovered is that if in the right structure and context, we can actually use that connection to create some of the things that I've been trying to create as a facilitator, speaker, trainer in a much more consistent fashion, because we're actually getting at some of the root issues. And one of those root issues right now is loneliness, lack of connection, isolation. And because the same thing of, if I can't fully show up to lunch, that if I feel that isolation, my brain is just trying to fix that pain.
Yes.
Way more than it's trying to do whatever job, because it's designed that way. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. That's my brain exploding. There's so much good stuff in there.
Well, the loneliness stuff isn't mine, and as much as like I actually, and normal is the wrong word, but like statistically, right, relative.
Yeah.
The book, and I am recommending this book to everyone. It's a book called Together by Vivek Murthy, who is the current Surgeon General. It came out a little over a year and a half ago, and he outlines in that book that the biggest health issue in this country is loneliness.
More than smoking, isn't it like the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day?
No, you'd be better off in terms of longevity in life to be a 15 cigarette a day smoker with a friend, and by friend meaning someone you can actually have rely on for emotional connection and need, than a non-smoker without a friend. Yeah,
that's wild.
And there's so much like wrapped up behind that, but what the connection that we made over this 1 year was that ability to connect and the strength of connection that we create through interaction is directly tied to our inability to actually follow through on emotional intelligence, leadership, all of these skills that we have.
Yes.
Require this like fitness level. So it's not like, and I used to say it all the time as a speaker, like you can have a PhD in psychology and still be a jerk.
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
I mean, you can know everything about how to have a conversation and still just be, the worst person in, I'm trying to say this in a way that's appropriate, but the worst person in a conversation, because the practice is different than the knowledge. And and the part of the brain that allows us to practice doesn't care about the knowledge, actually. It's driven by experience, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So we feel like we're creating a whole new platform to kind of address that directly, and it's been so neat to see people being involved with it and coming to our weekly workouts, right?
I love it. Can anybody sign up for your weekly workouts right now?
Yeah, so we have, so we're tonight at 6 o'clock Mountain, we have a free, so we're doing twice a month. We plan to do them weekly, where you have a free kind of trial one where you can come and try it out, or you can come and just watch, so that you understand the process. We used to have it completely free, but what we found is that like, it's a like this insignificant like investment that has to happen.
That's
it's
right.
Sort of like, it's like we didn't come up with workout or gym. It was actually the participants that did that. And it's a lot like, I have a home gym, but when I pay membership to CrossFit, I go. Like,
it's weird. All of a sudden I show up.
Yeah. And I'll actually put in the I put it in the chat. There's a calendar link to the session tonight. Anybody's welcome to join us. But so we tried on, a handful of times a month, or rather, we're only 3 months into this, moving from just an experiment to a business.
Yeah.
We let people come on because, like a workout, I can tell you about how it feels after a run. But when you get the endorphins, it's different. And so, we like people to try it on as much as possible. We give questions away. We give the structure away, because our biggest goal as a company isn't necessarily like, yes, we, to survive and sustain, we need members and we need to do keynotes and all of this stuff. But our real big goal is to use these and create more processes where more people are connecting. So we say, steal away, go have fun with it. But it's the process is super simple.
Yeah. This is why, and I'm sure as we're sitting here just 20 minutes in, Brian, the way that you think is truly the future of leadership. Not hoarding data, wanting to create experiences for everybody, but figuring out how do we create these kind of spaces for people, and then getting, allowing people to have experiences, not just this is how we do it or this is how you do it, but let's try it on. Let's work out together. I think that is brilliant. And you're leaning into who we really are, which is social creatures. We gain courage from each other. We gain validation in some of our relationships, hopefully. But it makes sense that you're creating this space for everybody. And if you are on TikTok, go follow Brian, because you're going to see things, you're going to see weird dances. Okay, you might see a vegan recipe you don't care about, but when you get to Brian's, you're going to feel that shift in yourself, and the responses that he's getting from people on TikTok is so cool. It's just the beginning. He's already got, I think, 52,000 people watching him regularly. How long have you been doing TikTok for?
Started in November.
That's what I think about. This message is so compelling that from now back all the way to November, 5 months, you're getting 10,000 more people a month wanting to pay attention and really learn from you. I think that's awesome. It's so cool to watch you continue to get this out.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting, I love TikTok. I did drama until I was like a sophomore in college, or not in college.
I love it.
In high school. And then I went away. And so now I have this like 1 minute platform, and as a storyteller, it's so fun to play. So I warn people that, like, if you're going to go to my TikTok, give me like a 1 in 5, meaning like, you're going to watch 4 that are like kind of bad, and then you'll get a good one, right? So if you can be okay with that cadence.
That's very That's very Gary Vaynerchuk of you. That's exactly what we would say. And get those at bats in.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and to that, what's been really amazing, and we have my Lauren, who helps with marketing, she's out of Australia. She put a bunch of these together where we took a bunch of the comments, and one of the bigger, videos that kind of went, I guess, viral.
Yeah, it went viral.
I think 800,000 or 900,000 people have seen it, but like, was the one on validation and the research, or not research, I shouldn't say that, the little like loose experiment we did with 150 people over last year that was focused on connection and validation, not validation like you did a good job, but how to ask a question that allows the person to then be heard in that structure that we created. But one of the questions that I tossed out on that video was, what went well because of you? Because on our weekly workouts, that's one of we call that like the core question, because it's locus of control, it's timely, but it has you focus on, it's not like what went well because of me, oh, I got a cake this week. Well, what was your part in that? And even that one, because it starts externally, they say, well, I had to develop relationships, I had to do this. With that question, and to your point of like, we know people are leaving when, they're not going to lunch. I had somebody email me, and I read it twice. I didn't even respond till the next day because it was kind of charged. But this individual sent that question out to their team, and crickets, nothing back, until somebody approached them and said, "Hey, when are you leaving?" And what they realized was that, like, what went well because of me, or a similar question to that, was the question they ask when people are going out the door. And I couldn't, if I told you how many emails and messages and connections I've had from, or people reaching out that have said, I've not had anybody recognize me in a month, in a year. And then as a facilitator on the road, the most consistent thing I heard place to place was, I'm just a number here. And it's so, and the connection between that and the skills we're trying to develop are one-to-one.
Yeah.
I cannot, like, think about listening. How can you listen to somebody intently if for the last month you don't feel like anybody's heard you?
That's right.
I mean, it's such, all of a sudden it becomes so much harder to do what you consciously know how to do, but because you haven't, like, your fitness level is down, right? It becomes hard to do. And that's the same with leadership skills, emotional intelligence, all of that stuff. Like, you have to put your gas mask on before you get somebody else's, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so so the workouts are really about, how do we create that with each other?
Yes.
So it's not come and tell me what great things I've done. It's you and I have a conversation of what went well because of you, which, by the way, I'd love to press you on that question, but we'll see if we have time.
Yeah. I love it. No, that's so great, because this idea of, and I think about this last year, and you talk about this running an Ironman. Ideally, can you respond and listen to people well? Yes. Now, in this last year, are you physically fit enough to listen to people, or physically fit enough to run an Ironman tonight? And that's the piece where sometimes we're like out of shape, basically, and we need to warm back into it. And I think we talk a lot about this concept of burnout. I wonder what you think burnout is based on your experiences. I think a lot of it has to do with what you're talking about. They run next to each other.
Yeah. And so I experienced it a couple of years ago on the road, and it was sort of the thing that opened me up to Murthy's book. I remember being in front of 500 people on a moderate size speaking engagement, being on the stage, walking off, and realizing that's as lonely as I've ever felt.
Oh.
And I was in front of people every day, interacting in really good interactions, but like, not providing myself space to be heard,
Yes.
and to say that as, a male from Idaho, right? Where I grew up in a small, like, to say I have an emotional need to start with is a huge thing. But for me to look at that and understand that, like, connection isn't about proximity. It's about interaction. It's about where am I getting the time? And for me, where I was getting connection was I kind of overloaded my spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, because I needed this thing that I didn't know I needed, I was not listening to her, which then I was trying to have her listen to me so I wouldn't
Yep.
shut up. and so that was a lot of what bore the style that we approached this experiment with, which is you've got 10 minutes and you can only ask questions. You can't give advice or feedback. And so you get to sit and have two people ask you questions for 10 minutes with no intention of where it's going, except to find the places that seem engaging for you, right? Depending on how the questions, started in that. And what we find is that like the validation I need starts when I start asking questions and letting somebody else be heard, because that provides a base level of connection. And then when I get to be on the other side, and it's every week people are, how do I feel so much better? Well, oxytocin, dopamine, epinephrine, like I can get nerdy on it, but it's connection. And then it's connection specific to, right, helping you clarify things you're good at, things you do well, your influence, your resilience, all of this. And it's so simple, but it's in such, we've had so many people, the first time you ask them what went well because of you, just completely break down. And we try to warm people up now so they're not thrown out like that. So we have the basics and
Yes.
to warm up. But some people just get on there and somebody will ask them a question and they'll just kind of stay in it. And it's like, wow, I don't know the answer.
Yep.
But I so appreciate somebody paying attention. Right. And it's heartbreaking at once on one hand, but the other hand is I think we're starting to figure it out. And I think if there's an upside of this pandemic, we are starting to notice that not only is this a need, it's also a key to the performance we're looking for, the engagement we're looking for, and the skill set improvement that we're looking for. Right.
Yeah, I think that's so smart because it seems like, if we were talking about connection just for connection's sake, companies, for-profit orgs would have a hard time, even if they're good people, like wanting to invest and spend the time. But we're talking about this is really how you optimize performance. I think about, and I don't know if you've talked about Maslow's hierarchy. You've definitely talked about security and safety needs. But Maslow's hierarchy, you cannot get to self-actualization without love and belonging. You can't even get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And in here, it's there's two things going on. We're offsetting the fight or flight piece by helping people like amplify their strengths, their influence, the things that they do well. So there's a locus of control connection. I can get super nerdy about that too. But the other piece is that think about the most competitive teams you've seen, and the highest performing teams are they understand each other without asking. Their time isn't spent saying, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, here's where you're falling short. They are, to use the book, they are experts of each other.
Yes.
They understand this person is going to do this at this time because here's where they know where to get out of the way so the other person, and how that happens, how I'm able to then get out of somebody else's way because their skill set, it only happens if I feel like my skill set has been heard or my strength has been heard, that people understand what I bring to the table. If I don't think people understand what I bring to the table or that I have a place here, I've been heard, then somebody coming in to do something that I might be able to do who might be better, well, now that's no, I have to cut that person off because that's a survival issue for me. But when people feel like they've been heard, and again, that sounds like super touchy-feely, but it's really just consistent conversations and building the fitness of that communication. And when that happens, then it's, it's inviting that other person to be in the place where they're most capable, because now I know that when my opportunity comes, I'm gonna do that in the place that's right for me. And the teams that do that quicker, that are able to build that as a process. Again, we say gym because it's not something you can know about it all day long and really suck at it.
That's right.
It's the practice piece that that we see then people just opening new doors for themselves, if you will.
So would you say when you talk about people strength, is this what you're talking about? That we're stronger together, that we actually will perform higher if we kind of know our role, we feel validated, and we're able to step aside? Is that kind of what you're talking about when you say people strength?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to give you a good example of it. But yes, at the basis, if we're purposeful about our interactions, there's things that can happen between two people that are hard to happen by themselves, or rather with an individual by themselves.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm just gonna, if it's okay, I'll give you the question that we played around with last week, and we'll just do it for a few minutes, just so people can see, but so you can feel it. And this is one of the tougher questions, so I'll warn you. We're starting right at kind of graduate level here, but I think that you got it. In the last month, Lindsay, when or where were you the most valuable?
This is great.
In the last month, where were you
the last month? I would love it. Share in the chat too. If you are we all working this out, or am I just
yeah, so they can think through it, but I'm going to focus on you, right?
Put the spotlight's on me. In the last month, there's a company that I work for here in Indy as kind of a people officer, a culture coach, where I'm helping millennials, usually about my age. I'm helping them understand their role, because a lot of them have pretty elevated roles. So it's a young company, and everybody's learning how to take responsibility for their part and really pour into the value of the company. And there's been a few times where instead of me jumping in with best practices, I shut my mouth and I just listened. And I was influenced by a certain person, Brian's book, to do this. But when I stopped and listened and got uncomfortable, their human started to come out of them, like their humanness. And the conversations we're having a month later, because I stopped saying like, well, here's the best practice, here's how you do it, let me show you how to do it. And I just created what I like to call luminous space, just space, and holding that space for them. I think that was the most valuable thing that I did, was to stop telling.
So it's okay if I go a couple levels on this with you?
Yes.
A few more questions. Okay, so you said you shut your mouth and you stop talking. What enabled that? Like from your perspective, like you maybe you picked up in a book or something, but like that's a tough, like I want to say something. So what allowed you to pump the brakes and then provide that, as you say, the luminous space?
This year, I really did start to realize what I had to offer in a new, fresh way. So I knew that I could create change. And because I knew that, I was willing to go in a little bit different direction than normal. And I was ready to do that and be confident that that was the right wiggle.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep going back in there. So you said you realized, tell me about when and how you came to that realization that you could create that space.
Well, definitely during the pandemic, I started to see that I could create that, because there was such a shakeup of how everyone could operate, that all of a sudden having a listener there that understood people, because I have a coaching cert, which doesn't mean anything, by itself, but I think I created that space because I had a couple pivotal conversations where I knew that more than anything, because everybody was in so much psychological pain, I knew that I could just be present and that would be enough. I wish I could share, like, I'm sure you want actual vignettes of what this looked like.
No. Here's where we're going to go, though. You said, okay, this stuff happened in the conversation. You were seeing this. What allowed you to see it? What is it about you that like allowed you to see those things? You were able to see them because you had or are what?
Well, I started to take on this. I'm a luminary. That's really what I believe I'm supposed to do, is to create space for people to find themselves again. Really.
Yeah.
So I wrote that at the top of my whiteboard because I was working this out with my coach. What the heck am I really doing? I write keynotes, blah, I talk, blah. What am I, if, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I really want to be about? Creating luminous space, being a luminary.
Yeah.
And it changed I started to rewrite how would a luminary talk to Brian? I literally thought about that before we met. How would a luminary walk into this meeting?
And I'll just do one more question.
Great.
For somebody to be able to say, I am a luminary, to move into that, what do they have to have?
I feel like I'm about to answer like a head question and not be like totally vulnerable. What do I really have to have?
Whatever the answer is.
Well, support. I needed people who saw me, who told me like, this is how I experience you. And I was kind of shy about it. Oh, I don't know.
What did you have to have internally? What does somebody that does that have to have internally?
Well, space themselves, quiet. And I had to really believe I have to believe that that's my purpose, and I do.
Now, see the connection? You believed in yourself, you believed in what you could do, and you believe that like you're a luminary, and that's actually what created your ability to shut up.
That's right.
And see, the interesting thing is you listen to that conversation. This is very similar to the conversations that happen every week, is when you ask somebody, where were you the most valuable? Listen to where the answer initially goes. Because I shut up, because I got out of the way. Those are all things you didn't do, right? That's like, because I quit being whatever. No. This happened because you believed in yourself and you're a luminary, which allowed you to give the space. And there's a difference between saying I shut up and got out of the way and this happened versus I'm a luminary and I knew where to allow to give the space.
Yes, that's right.
So the conversations we allow for people are just like this, for them to explore like, wait, I know my brain's going to go into this, oh, it's not me, it's whatever. But if I say out loud, because I have this strength, if I have this, that is one of the most scary things to do as an individual, because it puts us at risk. But when I get to do that with a group, that's what we're talking about, being heard. It's not about like, I come on here and tell you about my week and how everything sucked. Our conversations are about, tell me why the world is a better place because of you. Tell me the strength that you brought to the table that made the people around you a little better, right?
Yes.
Those are the tough conversations. Like this is not for, like, I don't want to say it's not for the faint of heart, because it's not super, because it's pretty, it can be whatever level you approach it. But when we talk workout and fitness, it's tough to kind of go in there sometimes like, but after a few weeks of practice, people get really good at asking the question to dig in there and not letting somebody run away from the thing they did well.
Yes.
And B, getting more clear about, I'm a luminary. I believe in this and I believe what I'm doing. And so that clarity allows them to be more efficient in the decisions they're making, and more importantly, in the things that they're saying no to, right? And
that makes a lot of sense.
And that, with that interaction with another human being, you can tell yourself 20 times, I believe in myself, I'm a luminary. You say that out loud one time, and just from the chemical, right, that's going to be kicked up right into your brain, you can kind of see it as you were acting, or not as you were answering the question, like, oh crap, there's all these people on the call, like, I know what to say it out loud. But saying it out loud just has a different charge. And so it can then rewire what's back there. So you see more opportunities to be that luminary who believes in themselves and who's going to go out and create really good space for people.
That's right. That's so true.
Yeah.
That's really true.
Groups to reinforce that. We use the groups to, again, each other to build that strength in people. Yeah.
I love that. And I can feel the shift too. I can truly feel it. I've got huge pit stains from it too, but you can really tell that something, as you change your identity and come out, and I'm fully saying that out loud, that it changes how I make decisions in the future, just like you said, how you view opportunities, all of that starts to shift.
Yeah.
That's
And the cool
incredible.
thing is, and thank you for doing that in front of a group. That takes a lot of
Totally.
bravery in there. But what also happens is we feed off of that energy, the rest of us watching. We see you step into that. And what it allows is, and I always think about it as a little dome, when somebody steps into that, here's who I am and here's what I bring, other people then start to get this little like safer space to be able to maybe say, well, you know, maybe there are some things that I do pretty well. Maybe the world is a little better because of what I'm bringing to the table. And
Yes.
and when we talk about being heard and validated, it's that somebody being able to say out loud, right?
Yeah.
Things like that, right?
That's powerful. I hope that, seriously, head over to Brian's workout, check it out, and I hope that more people continue to, and I know they will, get this chance to have this experience with you, because it's so important that we see ourselves clearly and that we're validated, and that even just for ourselves, it changes our trajectory. It changes everything.
Yeah, no, it really, what we created, I didn't create. The group created, the 140 people that came on as the, you know, sort of trying this experiment out week to week. And what, you know, our goal as an organization is actually to get other coaches and leaders to be able to run these groups, right? Like, and individuals to be able to ask them. We got a great person on the call who's like, oh, I'm going to run these groups with a group of 17-year-old, high school something or other. And I'm like, great, because I would be so afraid of that.
They would eat me alive.
But that's their area. I just have, like, my first job as a teacher, I was coaching 8th grade girls volleyball, and I think I have like trauma experience. but our goal isn't necessarily like we're going to have the space for people to come, but what we're really as an organization looking to do is arm leaders, coaches, and influential people so that they can go create, you know, their own groups. And because you can create them in a lot of different ways, it doesn't have to be as intense as the conversation we had. It can be like our team does every day, which is just ask the question, what happened yesterday? What went well yesterday because of you? Our first 10 minutes of every day for our team is that question. And it helps us make decisions. It helps us understand. It helps us get an idea of, oh, you care about that? It's so surprising how often that happens, but it then allows us to say, oh, then you can do this because I hate doing that, right? Stuff like that. So we see this with, you know, we're implementing it with a couple of larger organizations right now. We've just moved out of our soft launch, and tonight we'll be offering the first kind of train the trainer opportunities. So we'll have little cohorts that are going along where people practice on their own, but then we're giving them the tools to go and take to their organization. And then we're going to have other coaches that offer hours on our platform so that they can, invite their own folks, but then get access to, the broader community that's growing. But
I think that's amazing.
We really hope we inspire a bunch of other people to do the same stuff. I mean, yes, we want our business to go, but the need is so big, and some of the solutions to it can be much more simple than I think people like me often approach. And I told people I used to be an ultra marathon runner, and I was training with this guy that was like 60 years old, and he was running 300-mile races a year, right? And every time it was so fun to sit and have a beer with him, because people who knew him, how do you run that much, and how do you prepare for that? And he would always kind of sit back, drinking a coffee or a beer. He'd sit back and he'd say, well, I run, and then if I got to go further, I run more. And
there it is.
And as we look at this, it's like the things that we need to be able to use those skills of emotional intelligence leadership start with connection and validation and consistent human interaction, right? Because that it's a fitness. I take my dog to the dog park, But if my dog hasn't been to the dog park in 2 months, you can see it because he is not fit for public consumption, right? Just retrained. But that's the same with us. Like, and so we look at like, we have to consistently train that people strength for us as individuals to then be able to perform when we're out there. Yeah.
I think that's so smart. We just sent out an email today and there's questions in it that you can do with your team after this. But one of the things we talked about is that you're more like a tomato plant than a laptop. You need consistency, like you said. Some sun, not too much, some water, not too much, but there's a consistent pattern there if you really want to get tomatoes.
Yeah. And we feel like a lot of folks that love the practice and the workouts, they love it because they learn to ask more authentic questions. They learn to be quiet in conversations, not because we've taught them, but because they get the practice. They have to.
Yes.
So it changes the experience. But what's interesting is every once in a while they'll get busy and they'll come back after 3 or 4 weeks and they always say, "Oh, I'm rusty. I gotta get this doing big." Yeah, one of the people that have been on since the beginning, and it was only that's like a handful of calls. He's like, "This is the best dating program I've ever been to." Because he has now that pause and he knows how to ask better questions. So yeah.
Oh man, this is really to help you grow your humanness and your ability to connect. I'm sure you know Johan Hari's book Lost Connections that talks a lot about how we become disconnected as humans, and then there's a whole pile of problems that come after that. Yep. And you're helping people really build that fitness to be able to do it in a way that we're designed to do it.
Yeah. And
love that.
The skills that people can use from there and how quickly they develop has been just I can't wait to get some PhDs in here to actually study what we're doing so that it can be then replicated out, in even bigger capacities than we can do at this company.
That's fantastic. This has been such an enlightening conversation. Brian, I'm so lucky that I got this time. This is one of those, sometimes when we get off the porch, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to go listen to that recording a few times. And this is totally one of them. And so I want to be mindful of your time. I know Lisa's got a question for you. Are you open to taking a question and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. Lisa's asking, is there a different way to deal with the older generation in the workplace using these same tools? We have a great mix of employees. So have you seen any differences between generations as you've done this work, Brian?
Not a big degree, except for initial comfort levels, right? So
there it is.
So we really talk to, especially in organizations, like the stuff we're doing on the fires calls, like that's sort of like mid-level workout stuff. It's really designed for the trainers and the people going to influence. But when we're bringing this into organizations, it's making the question less intense. Hey, what was your part this week? Like, that's how I would approach the older generation.
Yeah.
Older generations is wrong. I'm kind of in that. I'm not quite up there, but I'm getting there, right? It's not older, the different one. But for somebody that's not used to saying that stuff out loud, it's uncomfortable.
I can see that.
It's really about like kicking the question back into a safer space and understanding safety is different for different people. So saying, hey, it's important that I know what again, if I'm the person's manager, it's important that I know what you value, what you think you're doing, like what you are contributing to and what you're doing is heard, right?
Yes.
And so like, tell me what you did this week. Tell me the impact you're having, right? Tell me what you're proud about accomplishing. Tell me about the thing that you actually enjoy doing here. Try not to use the word actually. The thing that you enjoy doing here. All of those easier questions start so that you can move up to the more intense, like what went well because of you, which is a tougher one because it's internally locus. Like, no, this change, this number here happened because of you. So easier questions is the way to start, because what we find is that the questions are people being asked questions. It's just not common practice right now.
Not happening.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know Lisa said thank you. I think that's exactly what she was trying to wiggle through and figure out. This was incredible, Brian. Your time is so valuable, and we're lucky that we got to hear from you and learn more. There's so many ways for people to connect to you. How would you like them to connect with you moving forward? What would be best?
LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. Follow me on TikTok, but TikTok's not a good channel for interacting, right?
Right.
Find me on LinkedIn and/or sign up for one of the free workouts, or reach out to me directly. I can talk about this all day long. I schedule time so I go and be an actual human with my spouse. But whenever somebody's really interested in doing this, I love nothing more, because we need more of it. That's the simple part of it. Yeah.
What an awesome mission to be on, Brian. I imagine the people around you, that group, that community will continue to exponentially grow, and people will be in a whole new level of awareness and healing and personal growth as they work with you. So thank you again. And I hope you have a great night and time with your wife. We'll release you back to the wild.
Well, I want to thank you, Lindsay, not just for creating the space, but for doing the brave work of entertaining some of those questions in front of a big group like this. I really appreciate that. Your energy is contagious. I'm going to have to go for a run in the afternoon now. I appreciate what you're doing, and wish you the best as a speaker and everything you're doing. World needs more people like you. So
thank you, Brian. You too, for sure. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you next month on the porch. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.